friends, Breads with friends. Breads with friends, Breads with friends.
Four, their most accomplished album. I think their undisputed masterpiece is Hip to Be Square. Hey, Paul!
Mr. Paul Provenza, I really appreciate you coming on my silly little podcast, Breads with Friends. This is my 79th episode. My mouth is numb. I just got through getting some stuff done to my teeth. And
Wow.
so if my face looks awkward, if I start spilling my beer down my chin, it's just because my whole face is numb.
Did you get the Vicodin? That's all that matters.
No, I got the shots, and they put some fillers, and the cavities with the stuff with make your teeth look pretty.
Okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but it's just because when I don't just have cavities filled. When they go into my mouth, they yank out huge tracts of real estate and put in new prefab condo teeth. Yeah, half my mouth is fake.
Well, this is what it comes down to is, when we're in our 20s, we're talking about pussy. And now we're older, we're talking about our teeth.
Oh, let me tell you about my colonoscopy, my friend.
Oh, I got one scheduled. What should I know about before I go into? I got one scheduled on the 25th of August. Should I be scared?
What you need to know is they're awesome. I don't care what anybody says. Fuck those hack jokes. Buy me dinner first, all that shit. Fuck that. The drugs are out of this world. They're the best, and they last till the next day. Really, it's the best.
Okay, so is that the Twilight thing? The Twilight thing that they give you?
I don't know what the hell it is, but you're asleep before you can even think about it.
Okay.
And when you wake up, you're nice and groggy and nice and high, and that's a nice buzz that lasts for a long time. Me like it. I'm gonna get in recreational colonoscopies.
Just for the fun of it.
Yeah, a bunch of friends hang out and go get colonoscopy together.
It's like how people do mushrooms together, except they're doing colonoscopy.
Exactly.
So I wanted to start this is a free form show, no script. We're just gonna make it a little bit as we go along. But I want to talk to you about the first time I ever met you.
Yes.
Do you remember this?
Was that at the Actors Gang?
No, it's at the Dr. Susan Block show.
What?
The Dr. Susan Block show. You remember that?
Oh, that's right. We met at Susan Block's show. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, that was hilarious, man. That was so funny. How I enjoyed it. I
love her. She's a great lady, man. She's all heart.
Did you ever hold on, the light fell down. Hold on. Oh shit. There you go. Did you ever see the footage from that day?
Was that the squirter day? Was that the day she had the doctor on making women squirt?
I got so fucked up that night. I don't even know what happened. I did cocaine that night. I never do cocaine. There was a guy up in the rafters by the end of the party that looked like he was about to jump from the rafters in this place in downtown. By the time I left, there was a guy who came in just off the street with a guy with the glasses who had a ball gag in his mouth, getting his ass slapped by Dr. Susan. The whole night was chaos.
Yeah, it was pretty kooky. Yeah. I remember that was fun. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was a guy there who I think he was called Dr. Squirt or something like that. And his thing was that he can make any woman squirt, even if she's never squirted before. That he could make any woman squirt, and women were just lining up. Okay, me next. It was.
I should have been on that one.
There needs to be a place for that in this world, don't you think, Brett?
Well, I think Ron Jeremy solidified his place in that world. He's in jail for it now.
Yeah, we can't talk about Ron Jeremy anymore. He's this is the first time that Ron Jeremy and Bill Cosby have anything in common, right? All those years, now they are on the same Wikipedia page.
Who would have thunk? But I heard a story. My buddy was at a party with Ron Jeremy, and he came up to a mutual friend, and he just grabbed her and started finger banging her. That's why he apparently, and she's like, "What the fuck?" It's like apparently he was notorious.
I've
Apparently,
seen
he is
that,
notorious.
I used to go all the time, not all the time, but I used to go every now and then to porn star karaoke. Did you ever go to that?
No, tell me about this. What is this?
I don't remember any of the details. It's some bar in the valley that had karaoke on like Wednesdays or something like that, and a bunch of porn stars would all go as one group, and so it would be mostly porn actors and actresses doing karaoke, and it was really a blast. It was really fun because they were so silly and goofy and everything. But I've seen Ron do that to people, and they had a lovely time. They didn't have any issues with it. So I suspect that Ron's barometer is a little bit kooky.
Well, he's 1 out of 10. I'll
Yeah.
probably not like it.
Yeah, if you're off by 10%, that's still actionable. I'm pretty sure you go to jail for that.
Yeah, the hedgehog. I actually had a group of friends, a trio comedy rap group called No Time. That I have to send you their. I'm going to try to get them on the show, but they did a song about Ron Jeremy, the hedgehog, or they have a lyric in there. It's very 90s rap. They should have been as big as Beastie Boys. No Time. One of their songs is called "Eat All the Old People."
All right. Well, Ron Jeremy's in a bunch of songs actually. I mean, he's kind of like really. I mean, there's nobody who doesn't know his name. But he did the Aristocrats for us when Penn and I were making that movie. And we ended up having to cut it out of the movie, not because it wasn't good. It actually was great. And I'll tell you the story about it, but it actually was great. But what he did was a poem. He did like a little, it was like a ditty about the Aristocrats, a rhyming verse. And we couldn't put it in because you couldn't cut it. I couldn't cut it. The movie is, cut into a million pieces. And I couldn't cut it, and so it had its own rhythm, and I couldn't fit it into the rest of it. But it was on the DVD release as one of the extras, and it was actually really like adorable. It's like I expected him to be like the most disgusting, and it was adorable. It was so cute. So I'm bummed out that Ron is guilty of such horrible things because he's really like. Did you ever see? There's a documentary on him called Porn Star. And when you watch the documentary, you walk away and you go, "Oh, this is like an old Alta Kaka Jew." He's like, there's like almost nothing hip about his life except for the fact that he's constantly fucking. It's really wild. He's like a little old Jewish man from the Bronx where I grew up. He's such a character. I hope. I'm sorry that he's the person that he apparently has been. I feel bad about that. I didn't know. Nobody knew.
I met him. I met him once. He came over to my house on Dudley Avenue once, and he came in with a friend of mine. And I was like, "Ron Jeremy's here." And so we didn't really talk too much, but I kept on seeing him after that night. I kept on seeing him everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, he'd pop up. He popped up at your green room show. He popped up at this concert I was in. You could always see him in the corner.
Well, I first met
In the
him.
corner.
I first met him in like the early '80s at the Comedy Store. He used to hang out at the Comedy Store all the time. I guess he's kind of famous for being a friend of Sam Kinnison's and introducing Sam to a bunch of women and stuff like that. But he was actually trying to do stand-up comedy at the time. In fact, I remember being at an acting audition, and there were a bunch of headshots laying on someone's table, and I saw a picture of Ron Jeremy, and I looked at it, and it said on the bottom, it had the name Ron Hyatt, H-Y-A-T-T. And that's how he was doing stand-up and submitting roles. He changed his name to Ron Hyatt. Didn't change anything about his name. He changed his name to Ron Hyatt, which he came up with because he used to hang out at the Comedy Store, which is right next door to the Hyatt Hotel. So I knew him as somebody hanging out at the Comedy Store. People always say, like, because we were really, when we were doing the green room, we were really striving for as much authenticity as is possible on television. And one of the things that we did was, everybody that was in the audience at the taping were people that you would find in a green room. It was all personal invites, myself, my producing partner, Barbara Roman, a couple of other people working on the show. So most of the people that were in the audience were comedians or some agents and songwriters and musicians, and people that you find in green rooms. That was a big part of making it feel like we're in a green room, was the fact that everybody in there knows what green rooms are like. And people keep going, why is Ron Jeremy in the audience all the time? I was like, that's how I met Ron. I met Ron in the green room at the Comedy Store. I mean, that's how I met him. I knew him as a guy doing stand-up.
That's not Ron Jeremy. That's Ron Hyatt.
As Ron Hyatt, yeah. I mean, obviously, I knew he was Ron Jeremy, and I had actually, appreciated his work in the past. But, but yeah, I met a comic. He hangs out in green rooms. He used to hang out with comics all the time. So I was like, yeah, you can come then. So it's wacky.
Okay, so
Ron Jeremy, what a shame. What a shame that a person is, you'd never think of a person like Ron Jeremy would have a dark side.
well, it just seems like we want to tear down our heroes. We bring them up and then we tear them down.
Yeah, we're gonna have to look at the use of the word hero, but I guess
or famous people, maybe that's better.
But he's an icon. I mean, if there were a Mount Rushmore of porn, he'd be on it.
Yeah. Which part? Hey, so I want to do like
the Washington Monument is Ron's Mount Rushmore.
So a little bit about, I want to go a little bit about your past.
Oh, yeah, I see that painting behind you. That's really beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's almost from this distance and through this lens, it's kind of got a little Van Gogh quality to it.
It's an idea of it's supposed to be a guy. It's supposed to be like a profile shot of somebody in a spaceship entering our atmosphere. This right here is the top. This is the human form, and these are some blasts of fire coming out the sides. And this is the sky up here. It's very abstract. It's an idea I did a lot better. Actually, well, it looks pretty cool like now. Like I like it like that.
It does. I mean, it looks impressionistic from here.
Yeah, thanks. It's a little palette knife, oil on canvas.
Well, you work in a lot of different styles, don't you?
Yeah, I work in like palette knife is a very freeing because you're not using a brush, but
right.
I don't like to necessarily do texture just for the sake of texture. Like I don't like build up a painting with just texture, then paint something on top of it. I like it to be part of the painting. Right. And things come out of that. And then you do some some dry brush, and you're just doing layers and layers and layers, really, until you get to a point where you get, I think it's done, or I should leave it alone.
Yeah, it's interesting when you use palette, you get these interesting, very subtle kind of shadows. It casts its own shadows and stuff, and it does cool things.
And when you work, so if this is the flatness of the canvas, if you're doing all these like cutting, and there are all these like almost like diamond, for lack of a better word, like cuts, when you put a high gloss on it, it reflects in different angles.
Right. Yeah. You seem to be talented and know what you're doing.
I put my 10,000 hours in.
Did you study?
I mean, I had 2 photography classes in high school and 2 art classes in art in high school. And my brother's a really good pen and ink artist, but he lacks any enthusiasm. So I think I kind of got all the enthusiasm for painting. And I sold my first painting when I was like 13 years old. It was an airbrush of a pepper going into water. One of those Japanese realistic airbrush. I was really an airbrush. I can do realistic stuff and I can draw, but I sort of made a conscious decision as a child because I could do cartoons really easy. Tex Avery, Chuck Jones, Frank Frazetta was a huge influence. Ralph Bakshi, and I found like I could do like a perfect like Popeye, like really good, and I'd be drawing that like. And I thought that, I don't know, it was weird because I thought cartoons would be too easy to do. So I went like a Van Gogh, Da Vinci-esque. Those were, Kandinsky, Matisse, Van Gogh obviously is the gold standard. But like I was influenced by those guys. And so I wanted to take my art into a different direction. And lo and behold, like all these people that are like illustrators or cartoonists, they're just making shit for other people to make profit off their genius. Right. So like, as Tex Avery and Chuck Jones had the Termite Terrace, which I would love to make a movie someday of the Termite Terrace. Maybe have to get the Termite Terrace.
What is Termite Terrace? I've never heard of that. What is that?
The Termite Terrace was where Tex Avery and Chuck Jones and Fritz Freeling and all those guys would have a separate little shack in the back of the Warner Brothers studios. And that's where they developed their more adult oriented, like their comedy was not for kids.
They did
Very, very psychedelic.
a lot of those, a lot of the older ones before they became, what we know as the Looney Tunes. A lot of their older work was really surreal.
Oh yeah.
Like they were doing drugs. Clearly, a lot of this stuff. Remember those old cartoons like Betty Boop and Coco the Clown?
Oh yeah.
Those acid trips, man. They were way, way, way out there.
Those are for even Steamboat Willie.
Yeah, well, a little bit, yeah.
A little bit with the rolling of stuff, the rolling of the land.
Right.
And
one of my favorites was Betty Boop in, I think it's called Crazy Town. You know that one? It's like it's like Alice Through the Looking Glass, but it's got that I think it was in the 20s, maybe 30s. It was freaking out there. It's wild. Yeah,
really crazy stuff. It was like they were doing like was cocaine still in Coca-Cola back then?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. Well, I did a lot of studying on the Impressionists at the turn of the century, and because I played Picasso in Steve Martin's play.
Nice.
Yeah, I did it in New York, and I did it on national tour.
Wow.
And even though the play doesn't really call for like intensive awareness of subtleties or nuances or minutia about Picasso's work or his life, I just got really deep into researching Picasso and things about his work and what have you. And an interesting thing I came across was that those guys, we're talking, Picasso did Demoiselle d'Avignon, I think in 1905 or 1907, somewhere around there. The details escape me right now. So we're talking turn of the 20th century, and all of the Impressionists, I am convinced that Impressionism is completely a result of absinthe, because those guys used to drink absinthe like there's no tomorrow. And I don't know if you've ever had absinthe, like real absinthe, because absinthe, you can't get it in America anymore. You can get something called absinthe, but it's not made from wormwood, which is real absinthe. It's it's an absinthe-like substance you can get that they call absinthe here in America. But in certain parts of the world, you can get real absinthe. And I happened to be working in Hong Kong. I was doing some gigs over there, and the owner of the club also happened to be the licensed importer of real absinthe into Hong Kong.
Perfect.
So it was like drinking water at his place. He was constantly pouring us absinthe, and I had never had it before, and I only knew it, it's like legend, and it's unbelievable. It's great. I could totally see people coming up with some of the amazing, work during the Impressionist period because of doing absinthe nonstop.
Was it psychedelic, or was it just drunk, or is it a combo of those two?
It's a weird thing. It's like you could call your mom on it. I mean, like, it doesn't fuck you up. Like, you don't get, you don't get stupid and and incapacitated in any way. But your experience of life is very different.
Interesting.
It can, I guess you can hallucinate on it. I don't think I ever, because I'm a lightweight, so I don't pound things back, and one glass of absinthe would last me an hour. But I'm pretty sure you can hallucinate on it. And those guys were doing it nonstop, so I don't know if it ever left their system. And wormwood, it basically destroys your brain. So you look at most of the artists from that period, they all had those fucked up lives.
Yeah. I mean, what else could they have gotten a hold of to make that change their perspective like that? Like mushrooms, they weren't doing mushrooms back then, were they?
I don't know.
They've been doing mushrooms forever.
All I know is if you're ever anywhere in the world where you can get authentic absinthe, check it out. And I'm not a druggie at all. I was 40 years old before I ever smoked pot.
Yeah, I'm a late bloomer too.
I came up because I was doing stand-up. I was already making money as a stand-up, as a professional at the age of 17. And I learned real fast, stay away from alcohol. When you're in bars and clubs enough, you see that no good comes of alcohol. It really, I've just seen too many people get fucked up by, drinking. And so I've always, I've had periods, I've had binges and I've had experiences and things like that, but I'm not a big drinker. Still to this day, if I have 2 beers a month, it's a lot, and also I went through high school in the 70s, college in the late 70s, and I was in the working nonstop in comedy clubs throughout the entire comedy boom of the 80s, where club owners would offer to pay you in cocaine. And I would have to go, yeah, my landlord doesn't take that. I'm sorry. Could I have some green, please? I mean, it was just everywhere. And I never touched it in my entire life. I had no desire to. Because, I would see people on coke and I'd go, oh, yeah, that's what I need. Something to make me more anxious and obnoxious. So,
dude, I'm an asshole on coke. Last time I did coke, I was like, the words that are coming out of my mouth, I was annoying myself. I even snuck into my other friends were in the other room. This is like 15, 20 years at 15. And I snuck into the room, not really, you feel like you're sneaking in, but I walked in the room where the coke pile was, and everyone's in the other room, and I started doing coke by myself in the room while everybody was away. And I was like, I feel like, it just felt like a troll, like, like I felt like a monster.
It never held any attraction to me. Like I said, it's like, everybody I knew that was doing it, the spirals happen fast. So I'd watch comedians, go from being great comics to being assholes and fucking off and just screwing up their entire careers, let alone their lives and their personal lives. And it just happened so fast to so many people that was just like an extra, aside from the fact that it didn't have any interest for me. Yeah. That was an extra added, like, yeah, I'm pretty happy not doing any of that. So I wouldn't say I was straight edge, but I didn't do anything. And I smoked pot for the first time at 40. And that was a very conscious thing. I often wonder, I'm like, what if I were doing it in high school or when I started doing comedy? Like, would it have made a positive difference or would it have made a negative difference? I don't know. It ultimately doesn't matter. But I can tell you that when I decided to do it, it was with almost like, how a lot of the indigenous cultures around the world would do various drugs as sort of spiritual explorations and things like that. I smoked pot for the first time, totally conscious of, I want to experience, because here's the reason was that I had been a bit of a control freak and it had served me really well. And I'm just talking about in my work, like, I wanted to be on top of it all. I didn't want to have, I wanted to be focused and not, altered in any way. And that had served me really well. But I found that as I grew older, like when I hit 40, I was finding like, that thing of knowing exactly what I'm doing and trying to make it happen the way I wanted to make it happen was actually limiting me. And because I sort of grew to the point where any kind of art, whether it be filmmaking or writing or doing stand-up or any of the stuff that I was doing, I felt like I want to have epiphanies. And so I sort of obsessed on this idea about, I want to see what it's like to not be in complete control of what I'm thinking and feeling and all that stuff. To surprise myself, to see what, isn't already there in my head or my heart or whatever. So I approached it as a really like almost a spiritual self-help kind of thing, and still to this day. I mean, I smoke a lot of pot, but usually not until late at night. I will go for a week without smoking pot, without even thinking about it. Sometimes I just forget,
You're a sativa guy then. You'd be a sativa guy, I would think.
Yeah, especially if I'm like, sometimes I'll take a couple of hits when I'm editing. And because, it's a great thing to do when you're cleaning your house, because I focus on I get into that grout and it's like obsessive, and, you get into the everything, and it makes me drive better.
You're not in a rush.
My wife always used to say, "You're stoned, aren't you?" And I was like, yeah, why? Because you're driving safely, and at reasonable speed.
I'm the best driver in the world. I swear to God. I've been driving. I was driving a moped because I was a year older than most of the kids. I was driving a moped to school at one point before everybody had their licenses, and I was always a good driver. And but weed, it's like when people are jamming you around, or you're like, just go, it's fine, just go.
Yeah. It completely eliminates road rage.
Yeah,
completely. I know everybody's different. I'm not saying everybody should go get high and drive, but
absolutely.
But I found it really made a big difference. It lowered my blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It just worked almost medicinally for me, and also sort of on that spiritual level, on that creative level. I mean, I have actually had breakthroughs. Creative breakthroughs, which is always a questionable thing, about how valid that is for some people. Some people use it as an excuse. For some people, it's legitimate. But yeah, I was 40 years old before that. I had no interest in doing any of that stuff.
Did
And
you
then
ever do psychedelics? Mushrooms,
I've
ayahuasca, peyote?
I've done mushrooms 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
That's it, but never any chemicals, you know. Yeah, like when I did mushrooms, I didn't realize that I was doing this, but it was very much in that sort of, you know, primal thing of it being ritualistic and you know, focused on some spiritual journey of some kind.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word. But yeah, no, I've never been a real drug guy. Having said that, though, the drugs for the colonoscopy are fucking awesome.
Can't wait. I'm excited. Get me in there. Get it in there. So I want to throw some names up about some actors that you might have met. First of all, have you ever been intimidated by an actor? Have you ever met somebody that you're like, well, this is just, let me take a second here to absorb this, what's happening.
Oh yeah, I got a bunch of those stories, man.
Can you give
A
me
lot
some?
of. I'll tell you one that has a big name in it. When they were first casting the American version of Whose Line Is It Anyway, they called in a bunch of comedians, a bunch of improv actors, a bunch of people to just work together. And then they were weeding people out and putting teams together. And just, it was kind of a long, involved process, more than just a couple of sessions. And I ended up at the final cut in a group that included Mike Myers.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't consider myself an improv guy. Like I have a little bit of background in that. I have a lot of acting training, and improv is part of that and everything. It's like I'm not intimidated by it. I can hold my own, but I don't consider myself like, you know, I'm one of those guys, you know. Yeah. It's definitely a challenge for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was shocked that I made it as far as I made it. And we're doing these sessions, and I end up working with Mike Myers. And I swear to God, I would just be like, oh, right, I'm here too, right? I was just riveted. I was like, what is he doing? I was absolutely blown away. And I obviously didn't get the gig. Neither did he. And he didn't get it either.
Okay.
Mike Myers didn't get it either. And I'm telling you, I was working with him, and it was like an out-of-body experience. I was like, I'm not even in this room anymore. I'm just in there. He was unbelievable. Absolutely blew me away.
What was the most unbelievable thing about what made him unbelievable? What was the thing that made him?
You never knew where he was going, how he got there, how to even, you know, respond to it. It's like, I can't describe. This is the thing about art. When it's so good, you can't words what it is. Nice. But clearly he was on another level. I mean, he was just, you know, I mean, I figured that the reason that he didn't get it was because he was so special that nobody else could really do what he did, and he would end up standing out as opposed to being part of a collective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think they wanted everybody to be kind of a
unit.
Yeah, a unit, and there was no way that he wouldn't be the star of the show because he was unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
Was that before or after SNL?
Before.
Wow.
It was before. I just knew of him as a guy who had been living in England. He was from Canada, and he had done some work. I don't know if he worked with like Second City Toronto. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But I just knew that, you know, he was a guy that had been doing this for a while. And I had some friends over in England that knew of him. They had seen him do some stuff, whatever. So I knew that, you know, he was somebody.
Yeah.
But man, fucking.
Was this early 90s?
Oh, God, I can't remember.
The 90s? Do you remember the 90s?
You know,
the 90s were like a crazy 10-year. There's like in the mid 80s to mid 90s was like a crazy explosion of comedy and people getting TV shows and blah blah blah.
But it's not even that throws me off. It's just, I don't know. It's like I just turned 65, and it's like what was like a definable 8 or 10 year period now is just sort of amorphous. You know, it's an
Yeah.
amorphous the past. And
Yeah.
I can't really place things, you know, for the most part. I mean, I do remember the 90s in the 90s were a time where I was doing a lot of different kinds of things. I was doing a lot of theater. I was doing a lot of TV acting. I was trying to sort of spread my wings, you know.
Mhm.
Um, uh,
And you're very successful when it comes to the TV, because when it comes to the TV, you were success. Like you were, what was the show? And I know I'm going to butcher it, and I should have done some research, which I never do. But it was like a Northern Exposure sort of television series where you're the lead or ensemble cast.
yeah, I replaced Rob Morrow, and I always tell people in my contract, the job description was cancellation scapegoat. But that kind of have a rich history with that. I almost got it the first time around, and I didn't. And Rob got it, and then they were going to recast it because apparently, after the first few years, you know, he was trying to renegotiate his deal, and the network wouldn't break top of show for him, and they were going to replace him. So they held casting sessions to replace him, and I was down to the wire again on the show. And then the show got an Emmy nomination, or he got an Emmy nomination for the show. So the network said, okay, let's just pay him what he wants. So that went away again. And then the third time, he actually left the show because, you know, he had been on it for 4 or 5 years at that point, and I guess he saw better pastures or more interesting pastures. He was just tired of doing the same thing,
Yeah.
I guess. And then finally I got it, which it was weird because you know, all the producers that were there at the first 2 times I went in were all gone. It was all different people, you know? So it was like, I had this weird connection with this show for years and years and years. But you know, people fall in love with the stars of the show. People fall in love with the, you know, the personalities and all. And they would just, and Northern Exposure was such a particular, unique kind of a show that, you know, bringing me in was like almost offensive to the, you know, to the viewers. And right around the
This is
time,
like when they tried replacing Dick York with the other Dick for Bewitched.
yeah, I guess kind of. Well, it was actually, they did the opposite with me. You know, with him, he was a Jewish guy from New York who didn't want to be there. He had to be there because his medical school was financed by the government, and they put him in, you know, in a place where they needed doctors.
Mhm.
So he went to Alaska, hating the fact that he was in Alaska. With me, my character had a real romantic view of going to helping people in far-flung places, and, you know, and it was, you know, he was fed up with the rat race of, you know, his normal practice, and he was married, so he and his wife went to make this new life, and it proved to be rather disappointing and really challenging to live that way, and they're second guessing their choices the whole way. So it was really the flip side of what his characters was.
Sort of Doc Hollywood a little bit.
I'm not
Remember
real
that?
familiar with that.
Well, it was
Yeah.
a movie with Michael J. Fox where they moved to the country, sort of, you know, that.
Yeah, so they were both fish out of water stories, but one was, I don't want to be here, and he ends up, you know, falling in love with the experience, and mine was, I want to be here so badly, and it ends up being, you know, wow, did we make a huge mistake, you know? It was fun to do, and I got to work with David Chase, which was phenomenal, and John Corbett and I are still real tight. He was hilarious. He welcomed me to the set. My first scene shooting was with him. Was a scene with him, and, you know, director comes down, gives me my notes, and Corbett would just lean over and go, "Don't listen to this guy. Don't listen." Whatever. He was talking. He's a really funny guy. So it was a great experience. I loved it, but you know, it was destined for a short run because well, there's a lot of backstory to it actually. You know, after a series has 100 episodes, this is the business at the time. It's all very different now.
Yeah.
But at the time, the business was, you know, the show was deficit financed, which means that Universal Television paid more money than they were getting from the network to run the show.
Okay.
But they own the show, and when you have 100 episodes, you can sell it in syndication, and that's where you make all your money, right?
Yep.
So it already had 100 episodes in the can by the time I showed up. It was 4 or 5 years in. It was at least 5 or 6 years in that I showed up. So they had over 100 episodes. So from that point on, if you make 120 episodes, you don't get 20% more money. It actually decreases the value of every other episode.
Wow, that's crazy.
Because you don't, it's, you know, if they buy the package for 100 shows,
Yeah.
and if you give them 120, you don't get literally one-to-one difference with 20 more episodes. So each actual episode ends up being worth less. And from a bookkeeping standpoint, that becomes a thing.
Mhm.
So Universal was kind of on the fence about continuing the show and all this and all that. And they actually, at that point, were making more money by selling Northern Exposure merch than they were from actually selling the show, you know, episode by episode or whatever. I forget how to explain it, and it's a little, I'm oversimplifying. But so the show was kind of destined to be finished anyway. So I kind of was a bit of a sacrificial lamb in that regard. But I didn't care. It was great fun. I had
No, it's a
great
huge opportunity for sure. I mean, that's
it was great fun. I got to work with Terry Polo, who I adore.
Uh-huh.
You know, she was somebody that every time you're working with her, you go, wow, this I got to bring my A game. I'm not at my A yet. She's at her A+ game. God damn it, she was phenomenal. And you know who else was phenomenal? I worked with Dinah Manoff on Empty Nest and Richard Mulligan. The two of them were unbelievable. Richard Mulligan, I'm convinced that if he were alive when Chaplin and Keaton were alive, it would be Chaplin, Keaton, and Mulligan. You're like, just unbelievable. Like his comic instincts, his physical life, he had the greatest fumfer of anybody. You know, when he's getting caught in a lie or doesn't know what to say, just the greatest fumfering around. And his chops were just beautiful to watch.
Was he on what? I'm trying to place his face real quick. What other show was he on? Soap? No.
Yeah, I think he was on Soap. He was also in a bunch of movies.
He's a great character. Almost like a Ted Knight in a way. No.
No.
Ted Knight had the front part too. But
no, I mean
Mulligan. I know this guy. I will put a picture of him up right now. Put a picture of him up. Okay, so listen, you know what I said about earlier where I'm going to have to check out and we're going to have to come back?
Is it time?
It's time.
Bert, you can't go.
Mary, I gotta go.
Bert, you promised to talk to the doctor.
It's a bad idea. I'm in a lot of danger here.
What are you talking about? It's Dr. Medlow. He's your friend. You know him.
Mary, please. He's a psychiatrist, right?
Right.
Right. I said I would come down here. I thought all I would have to do is just show up and become invisible for him. But I'm getting nervous. And when I'm nervous, I perspire. And when I perspire, I get wet. And when I'm wet, I cannot make myself invisible. Now, suppose he wants a demonstration and I can't give it to him. Being a psychiatrist, he's going to say, this guy's a loon. Let's lock him up. I got a lot of work to do in my investigation. I can't take a chance. It's too risky. I'm sweating and I'm leaving.
Bert, you're not invisible. You cannot make yourself invisible. You have never been invisible. You will never be invisible. Never, never.
Taylor Negron. Can you tell me a little bit about him? I met him a couple times in Venice. I saw him right before he passed away. I love the guy. He was hilarious. Can you just give us a couple, like a sentence or two about Taylor?
I loved Taylor. Taylor was kind of like an emotional guru for me. You know, like Taylor was somebody that I could talk to when I was in a really weird place, and he always gave me unbelievable insights because he was a really beautiful, loving cat. You know, like he so responded to anything creative, anything artful, anything interesting. You know, I mean, he did art in all arenas. He was a great artist, you know, graphic artist. He did painting. He would make little things. He wrote. He created music. You know, in the last few years of his life, he was working very closely with this brilliant musician named Logan Heftel. And he was one of those people that was like inspiring. You know, if you showed up with something that you thought sucked, he would turn you around to it and go, "This is brilliant, man." You know, I mean, he just was so positive about anything that you did that was creative or interesting or artful or expressive. And you know, he was just an interesting human being, but he always made everybody feel really good. He made everybody around feel more powerful, more creative, more special. He was just a beautiful, beautiful cat. You know, I remember we were working together on a couple of things, and I would throw some ideas out, and he would just be like, you know, he would get this inspiration, and then all of a sudden, it would be like this huge thing that he incorporated to be like completely original. It's hard to describe, but I miss him. I actually have a quote of his about Lucille Ball in a frame on my wall, which I took from his memorial. They had these quotes printed on big paper hanging up around the memorial, and I was like, I got to have something from Taylor's memorial. I just loved him. I really loved him. I mean, he was a beautiful guy. I don't know that anybody ever had anything negative to say about him, because he was just this tremendously positive person, and all because of art and you know, knowledge. He just loved learning about things. He loved anybody's artistic expression. He thought had value out of the gate, you know.
Okay, and now here's another one, pop quiz. A lot of people might not know because not really a celebrity, but Sponto. Do you remember Sponto?
Sponto Gallery.
Yeah.
Yeah, on Venice Beach, an iconic spot that sadly is no longer there, but it had been there since the 60s, 50s.
Yeah.
Um,
Kerouac.
In fact, I met somebody there like way back in the late 80s, maybe early 90s. No, I guess, no, it's not true. It was in the early 2000s. We're still really good friends to this day. Yeah, it was this odd little gallery / performance space. And, you know, I lived on Venice Beach for like 35 years. And my, you know, who are the people in your neighborhood? Like Paul Krasner and I became friends.
Oh, Krasner.
Like 5 minutes from me, and what a life he's led. And
Good actor too.
you know, huh?
He's a good actor.
Paul Krasner?
Yeah.
I don't know. What'd you see him acting?
I thought I saw him acting in something where he was a bit part in something, but it was a dramatic thing. Maybe I'm not thinking about wrong.
Right. You might be right, because I only know him as, you know, I mean, I remember seeing him on the news when I was a kid, because he was one of the yippies. He was one of the, you know, big forces in the countercultural movement. He was Abby Hoffman's right-hand man, you know, co-wrote Abby's books.
Oh, wow.
Also co-wrote Lenny Bruce's book, how to, what was it called? I forget what it was called. His autobiography, which is like almost all fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Because Lenny was funny that way. But I mean, Krasner goes back to some really important and meaningful times. And
Maybe I think it's the wrong person. Maybe I got mixed up with somebody else.
Well, Paul was the editor of the Realist.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know how old you are and whether, you know, this stuff is you know, in your recall. But the Realist was a countercultural publication that was both. It was everything all at once. There was satire, there was comedy, but there was also legitimate news reporting and legitimate editorial. The Realist would publish stuff by people that couldn't get published elsewhere, like, you know, some of the Black Panthers and Norman Mailer, I think, wrote pieces for the Realist. It was a very important thing at the time, and I believe that all the editions are online. I think that was something Paul was working on before he died, was getting all this stuff online. And it's not just the text. It's like, you know, you can actually zoom in on the actual pages, you know,
Nice.
which I always love. It feels so different.
Yeah.
So Paul was a real countercultural figure, and he's kind of like Zelig in that he was with all of these people that were on the news all the time. He was somehow involved in aspects of what they were doing. And, you know, Abby Hoffman, when I was a kid, my father used to hate Abby Hoffman. You know, he thought he was, you know, hippie freak, and, you know, but I watch him and I go, this guy is funny. This shit is funny. They're trying to levitate the Pentagon. It's hilarious. And Abby Hoffman, I really felt like Abby Hoffman was, you know, as much a comedian as he was a political activist. And he was using his comedy to sort of, you know, point to the surrealism of the real political process. So he and Abby and Jerry Rubin basically were the core of the Yippies, which stood for the Youth International Party. But he and Abby always talked about how protests should be fun. And, so even among other people on the countercultural left, they would say, come on, you're not taking any of this seriously. But here I am, how many years later talking about it. It stuck with me, So Paul Krasner was a fascinating character, and he used to do stuff at Sponto. And Sponto has a history that goes back to, I believe back in the day, Allen Ginsberg spoke there, and all these, it was like this.
Venice West.
Huh?
It was called Venice West. Wasn't it called Venice West?
I don't know.
It's like when they're tearing the wall out of his studio after he passed away. There was an Allen Ginsberg had written his name on the inside of the wall.
See, there you go.
We're trying to figure out how we could get it out of the wall.
Yeah, right.
But we were like, forget it.
But so it had this great little history, and it persisted up until what's his name, who owned the place, died, and so there went a whole piece of history. But it was sort of a locus of all this revolutionary countercultural minds and art coming together on Venice Beach. I was really sorry to hear that it was gone. I was hoping that somebody would take it over and kind of keep the
that piece of property is worth so much money. The people that own that place are just maniacs. It's like you got a spot right on Venice Beach boardwalk. That's I've heard there have been so many crazy stories about them trying to keep it and not losing it and stressing out.
Yeah.
And, ultimately I think it might have been stress that did it.
It was basically the size of the room I'm in now. And what gallery / poetry reading / performance art / political rally place survives 50 years. It's kind of amazing that it lasted as long as it did.
I think Sponto knew that importance. He used to call it a renaissance and all this stuff, and I never really even realized that. I had many shows there and we were fun, and he came over to my house one time. I was living up in Marina del Rey, and I didn't even know he knew where I lived. Like, much less he drove right up. This was about 2 weeks before he passed away. And he was trying to figure out if he should move out of Venice or move to Palisades. I was all, just move. You can move. And we're writing it's a Sponto, so I'm fucking making a joint this big. I'm like making this is Sponto. How do you find me? He just rolled right up to my house on his bike. Like, he knew. I was like, okay, hey, come on, what's happening? And he wanted to
He contacted me. I didn't know him. What was his name again? Fialco?
Sponto?
Yeah, Jerry Fialco, was it?
Is his real name? God. Oh, we'll put it up on the screen if we get it. We'll do some research.
I think his name was Fialco or something like that. But I got a call from him out of the blue. And it's like, I didn't know him. I knew Sponto Gallery, and I knew a little bit about it because Krasner had told me a little bit about it. But he just, they got in touch with me and they said, we know you're a Venice native. We like to show, we like to do stuff with Venice locals. It's a big part of our vibe. And we really like your work, and we think you do an interesting countercultural work, and we'd like you to come from. It's like, out of nowhere, they found me.
You mean Jerry, and Susie Williams, Jerry, the guy with white hair who puts on
Jerry Fialco.
Yeah. What am I? Sorry, my brain was twisted there for a second. Yeah, I know Jerry. Yeah, Jerry.
Yeah, wasn't he the guy that he was the guy that owned it, and that ultimately.
No, he put some shows together. He does Beyond Baroque, I think, was one of the places that.
Oh, maybe before they moved to Venice Boulevard.
Yeah, and I do believe he's married to Susie Williams, the singer, vocalist. I had her on here. But yeah, is almost like that time sort of vanished, and when he vanished, it's sort of like
sure, it was the end of an era that had been fading for quite some time.
Yeah, he tried to keep it. Okay, before we do, because I want to know what you're working on right now, but I just got to talk to you real quick about Norm Macdonald. Do you have a Norm story? Because I met him a couple times, and I really felt connected to this guy, and I can't believe nobody knew he was sick, because when I saw him, I knew he was sick. Everyone's saying they didn't think they knew. I saw him, I met him, he was great, he's fucking funny, and I I tried to scribble down my name on a card because I said I'm a filmmaker. If I can ever help you do anything, he goes, you like you do documentaries? And, yeah, I can film anything. Because this is between when he had his YouTube channel going, and then it went to the bigger channel. This is the hiatus period before that, between that, because I've been watching his YouTube stuff like that was like candy, you know. You know, his podcast that he did basically. I said, are you gonna bring Adam back? He's all, oh, I love Adam. Because Adam was, you know, I always felt bad that Adam was there, Adam Egan. I said, he's all, I love Adam Egan. Are you crazy? Of course he's, you know. So I tried to write down my number on the back of this card at this liquor store, and he had a ton of liquor, and he's buying, and the pen wouldn't write on the back of the card because it was plastic, and so I handed it to him anyways, which would look like a bunch of chicken scratches, but I was that close to maybe helping him do his live video. But great guy, and I'm sorry, and I hogged the space on that one, but go. What was it with Norm?
No, just you know, I met him through the stand-up world, and he was absolutely hilarious. I mean, you could tell that he was unique, and he had a really great style. You know, he had this style that was so easygoing. It was kind of almost like like Jimmy Stewart. You know, I always talk about Jake Johansson has that similar thing. It's almost like, you know, it's just kind of like, aw shucks kind of thing. We had this great energy and always surprising, and like his appearance on the Bob Saget Comedy Central roast,
classic.
Now was just hilarious, and it was so funny because I'm sitting there with a bunch of comedians and a bunch of people who know better, and they're like, what the f are you doing? And I was in love with it. I knew he was doing like Bob Orban jokes, you know, some guy who's doing like, you know, convention of his plumbing supply, you know, workers Midwest somewhere, you know, he was doing those cornball jokes, and I just thought it was hilarious. And eventually it got so weird and uncomfortable that people started to get, oh, that's what this is. This is supposed to be. Right? It's so inventive and very insightful, very, very bright. So I knew him just from the stand-up world, you know, and we'd run into each other here and there. But then when I started doing comics only on Comedy Central, which was late 80s, early 90s, my Ed McMahon, if you will, on the show, who was also the head writer, was Fred Wolf. And Fred and I go back a million years. In fact, I had said to Fred, like easily a decade before the show actually happened, I was working with Fred somewhere, and I said, God damn, I can't believe how hilarious you are. And I said, man, if I ever had a talk show, I'd bring you on as my guy, my sidekick, you know? And then I got this show, and he was the first call I made, and he couldn't believe it. Like, he remembered that I had said that to him just as a nice compliment, but he couldn't believe it, you know? But that's how good Fred was. It was like, if I ever have the chance to work with Fred Wolf, I want to do that.
Nice.
And Fred, of course, was such an inventive, interesting comedy mind of his own that Norm Macdonald loved him. And, you know, in fact, when we were doing comics only, he was actually faxing sketches to SNL, where he had a couple of friends on the show. David Spade was really tight with him and loved his work. Norm Macdonald, a couple other people, and he would actually fax them sketches. And that's ended up being on the writing staff of SNL, because they were like, this guy keeps giving us shit and it's great, you know? So those guys were all really tight with him. And whenever they were in LA, they just come by the studio to hang out with Fred, and they'd come on camera, and all of a sudden, you know, David Spade's popping in and Norm Macdonald's popping in, and it just gave this great, you know, this
Murderer's Row,
odd little energy to the show. They're like, what the fuck, you know, because we wanted to make it feel like there were always comics hanging around the place, you know, and they would just pop in, and they just really were generous and really, you know, giving on the show. Just do a couple of lines here or there or whatever, or you know, pop into some weird sketches that we were doing, and then all of a sudden, oh, that's David Spade. Where'd he come from? You know, that was kind of a fun, wacky thing. But I always thought Norm was remarkable, absolutely remarkable. I mean, obviously, you talk to anybody that, you know, that's deep into comedy, and they'll tell you, man, and Dirty Work is hilarious.
Yeah,
It's
I need to revisit it. I need to revisit it.
So good. It's so weirdly funny.
Well,
And,
they get that together.
I didn't know that he was sick either, but after the fact, I realized, oh man, you know, he had been looking a little puffy. He had been looking a little, you know, swollen for a few years there. And I just assumed, oh, well, that, that's something that happens to people when they're getting older. They fill out, the face shape changes a little bit here or there. But after the fact, I realized, oh, he was like on prednisone or something.
Yeah.
Going on there. Had no idea. Some of his closest friends had no idea.
That's crazy. When I met him, I knew it right away. I knew it right away. Because he, I don't think he went. He's in Santa Monica. He was at the place on Main Street, and he had a little pustule, like on his, like he has a little freckle there, but he had a little pustule on it. And I was like, and he, I don't know. I've been around a lot of sick people in my life, and I don't know. Maybe I just picked up on it really quick, but what a fucking funny guy. Jesus Christ. And then, so we've had and what
he had this Gilbert, this thing that Gilbert Gottfried had, this quality of just like, he will say anything if he thinks it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Norm, as easygoing as he was, and as kind of folksy and casual as his style was, all that sort of stuff, his tenure on Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live is my favorite of them all.
Absolutely.
He got fired because he wouldn't stop doing OJ jokes, and he was just coming out
classic
saying OJ's a murderer like every week for
apparently murder is legal in California now.
That's the kind of shit that always gets me when I know that somebody's doing the shit they're not supposed to be doing, and they don't give a fuck. I'm immediately in love with whatever they're doing.
He's gonna lean into it. His devil may care quality is disarming. That's the disarming part about it. And then he launches out with this fucking Viper hit. Yeah,
he has this folksy, easygoing way, and then boom, just this laser beam, the darkest part that he can find. Loved him. I loved him. I wish that I had spent more time with him. I wish but I'm not into a lot of the things that a lot of people are into in comedy. Yeah, I'm not into sports. I'm not into a lot of stuff that he was a golf nut, and to me, golf is like I can't even. So we weren't real close, but we had a mutual. I mean, I felt like we had a mutual respect. He was always really, really generous and kind to me, and enjoyed laughing with me. And yeah, I would run into him at the Coffee Bean on Main Street, and he'd sit down and we talked for a couple of hours. And I ran into him at an airport once, and it was right after I had seen him do Colonel Sanders on the Kentucky Fried Chicken commercials.
Classic.
Right?
Nailed it.
Such a weird choice. I said, that paid good, didn't it? And he went, you have no idea. He goes, it all seems so wrong.
That's a perfect.
Yes, somehow just him doing it made it more. I don't know if it's just because I love Norm Macdonald, and when I saw him as Colonel Sanders, I was like, this is hilarious. Or if it was, if people that didn't know, and much about Norm Macdonald felt it the same way I did. But I just think he's one of the greats. He's one of the greats, and really subtle. Despite his viciousness, he was a pretty subtle cat. Yeah, he was great. He was great. Many years ago, I saw him do one joke that made me like fall in love with him. He just goes, "I saw a homeless guy today with a dog, and I thought to myself, that dog's probably thinking, this is a really long walk.
This is the longest walk ever.
Yeah, I can do this by myself."
That's a classic Norm. The thing about Norm jokes is you can say them even with or without the cadence, and they're like it's a joke. It's a joke. It's like it's like one-liners or two. The setup is very very smart, But I mean,
this is one of the things that made him unique, was there was something conceptual about what he was doing, but in the midst of all that were Emo Phillips quality great jokes. So it's like, where exactly is he? It's really hard to land on it. He was an original for sure. And of course, I mentioned Gilbert, who I fucking wept when he died. He was just a genius. There's not enough I can say good about him. But by the way, if any of your viewers have Sirius, my friend Dan Pasternak and I did a special tribute to Gilbert Gottfried. We had interviewed him for a project that we were working on about the 80s comedy boom. And of course, in that multi-part series, Obsessive Comedy Disorder is the series, and we did like 6 hours on the comedy boom, and everybody from Judy Tenuta and Jay Leno and Marsha Warfield and yeah, like all these people that we think were really interesting that we could get to talk about the '80s comedy boom, which includes the strike at the Comedy Store and all those inside stories about what really went on there. And it's actually a really great series. But so we had interviewed Gilbert for that series, and we only used little bites of Gilbert in that series because there's so many people involved in it, and it was this particular narrative. But I went and listened to the interview, and it was so much fun that we brought it to Sirius and said, we'd really like to do this as a tribute to Gilbert. And they were like, go for it. So, I edited it all together, and it's me and Gilbert, Dan and myself and Gilbert. But I've known Gilbert since I was like 15.
Wow.
I used to go to the Improv in New York as a patron before I started doing stand-up at the age of like somewhere around 16, 17. I started actually going up on audition nights.
Uh-huh.
But I used to go as a patron when I was like 15. And, they didn't give a shit. Nobody even checked IDs. I'm 15 years old. I'm sitting there drinking tequila surprises,
Nice.
And Gilbert was on every time I went. He was on, and he was on at the end of the show. He basically closed the show. And he even talks about this. He goes, I heard many years later that they used to put me on at the end. They used to put me on last because so many people would walk out, they could close.
That's a class.
So yeah, they used to put him on at the end of the night when they wanted to let the wait staff go home.
He'd probably
So I had first
lean into that pretty hard. I'm sorry.
I seen him when I was like 15, and at that point I think he was maybe 18. And he's always been an old Jew. I never realized that. Oh, he's really close to my age. He's and he was. I thought he was a professional. He's at the Improv, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
And he was unbelievable. And I would occasionally, when I would go to the Improv to see shows and feel it, I would bring friends of mine that I thought would appreciate it. And there were a couple of people that I specifically brought to see Gilbert. And when he died, I got emails from like 3 people going, I will never forget that night you took me to see Gilbert. We're talking,
30,
70. I got out of high school in 75. So we're talking like 74, 75.
Wow.
Gilbert started doing stand-up when he was 15 years old.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's great.
And so I went really back far with him, and we've been friends for a really long time. And then of course when we did the Aristocrats, it became like we had a very special connection and stuff, and we did a lot of promo together and things like that. And his wife Dara, when he married his wife Dara, it was a beautiful thing, because nobody ever thought that Gilbert would ever find that kind of happiness. She was the greatest gift in his life. But anyway, so we were reminiscing about a lot of this stuff, and I even say at one point in this piece, I think that Gilbert has probably written and completely forgotten that he ever did more material than any comedian I've known in all the time I've been hanging around comedians. I mean, stuff would just flow out of him like crazy. So I would start talking about these bits that I remember from back then, and he didn't even know. I would have to do his bits for him. And to hear him laugh at his own material was just the greatest. So it turned out to be a really, really great conversation that that goes far beyond just his experiences in the '80s comedy boom. So we put that up as a special tribute.
Is that just audio only?
Just audio on Sirius.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and what's the name of it again?
Obsessive Comedy Disorder is the name of the series. If you put into the search on Sirius, you put Obsessive Comedy Disorder, Gilbert Gottfried, it'll come up. There's probably a few things, but it'll come up.
Cool.
If you put my name in there, it'll even come up even better. But I really, my heart broke when Gilbert died, and he's another one. I didn't know that he was as sick as he is. He had been, he was never really a robust guy.
Yeah.
His whole. But I didn't know that he had these like really serious issues, and I knew there was at one point he was hospitalized for a little while, but I thought that it was resolved, and I didn't know that he was suffering as badly as he was towards the end. It was one of those things where, you just keep it. I think a lot of comedians want to keep that stuff private because they're afraid that people are going to cancel their bookings or something.
I think people don't want to be treated differently. I don't think people.
It's that too, there's that too, but it's also something as basic as, you know, people not going to hire me because they think I'm not going to be able to make the gig or
Well, and
whatever.
fucking Norm and fucking Gilbert were doing cameos right till the day they died, basically, almost.
Yeah, Gilbert was for sure. But I also set up a bunch of stuff. You know, I do that show Set List.
Yes.
Which is the brainchild of the evil genius Troy Conrad, where we create a set list and the comic gets it while he's on stage, he or she is on stage, and then he has to improv the set that goes with it as if it's material he's been doing for forever. And we did a TV series in the UK of Set List, and Gilbert didn't know anything about the show, had never seen it before, and I called his wife and I said, I want Gilbert out to LA, and I want him to do, because we taped in LA, San Francisco for Robin Williams. We brought it up there, so it was easy for him to do. He loved the show. And we shot some in London. So I said, I want to fly him out to LA. And she was like, well, what is this? He doesn't know anything. He's never seen this, whatever. I go, Dara, is there anybody that you know that's a bigger fan of Gilbert's? No, trust me. And they did. Came out, the first time he ever experienced Set List was doing it on camera. And he just fucking destroyed. In fact, it's one of the few clips from that series you can see on YouTube. If you YouTube search Gilbert Gottfried plus Set List, it'll come up. He did this piece. The prompt was Thomas Edison's testicle experiments. Shit, you cry.
Okay, well, we're gonna put that up right now. I'll enter.
Asking a comedian to improvise an entire stand-up set is like asking a magician to do actual magic.
House is open. Nobody has any idea what's on their set list, right? No. 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 No, that's correct. You get the topics one at a time. Audience sees them same time you do.
As long as you're hilarious, nothing can go wrong.
You believe I'm actually doing this?
I want to go up again. I want to go right now.
Oh, God.
You never believe what they're doing to me here. Languaging in my mouth hole.
I'll walk away safe from this whole deal.
Good. Tonight, for the first time attempting Set List, Gilbert Gottfried, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh. So any questions, Gilbert? You're good to go?
Yeah, how did I get involved with this?
Gilbert Gottfried, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, I was doing a show across the hall.
Well, Gilbert Gottfried popped into the studio, everybody.
I was just shooting my special.
What are you thinking? How are you feeling it's going to be?
What I was thinking is that I never found Fred that funny. You know,
But informational.
Have you done much stand-up, Fred?
I did years ago, and then I found that I hated repeating things, you know. But I still
come
do
to the right
occasionally.
place.
Yeah.
This is a brave man you have here. First time, and he's doing it with cameras rolling.
So, the can's good?
Oh, yes.
Are they funny yet?
Yeah, I think I like their early stuff.
Gilbert Gottfried, he'll be funny. Gilbert never at a loss for words.
Will you please welcome to the stage the never-before-seen set list of Gilbert Gottfried?
Yeah, I'm really excited. Yeah, it's the biggest thrill of my life. Please, save it for later in the set when I really need it. I don't want you to wear yourself out now and then later when I'm really bombing and I can use it, you're not going to be around. You know, everyone nowadays talks about Thomas Edison's testicle experiment. That's where he used to be able to light his testicles up. And that was the original light bulb. He originally just shoved an electrical wire up his ass, and his testicles lit up. Which was fine for a while, but when you're trying to read, and his testicles... It becomes very distracting when Thomas Edison is there with his pants around his ankles, standing on a chair over your shoulder, and his testicles are waving back and forth, and you're like, God, could you move back a little? I really don't need that much life. You know, it's hard enough to read Crime and Punishment without a constant tapping on the back of my head. But, you know, he actually got that idea from Alexander Graham Bell. Because that was the original telephone. And that was the old-style phone where you hold one testicle to your ear and the other testicle to your mouth. And a lot of times you'd get a hair in your teeth after the phone. Which sometimes when I'm talking on a regular phone, I get pubic hairs in my teeth. I don't know why this is.
We started doing Zoom setlist shows, and it would be Gilbert for an hour. You know, normally we would do setlist, it's like 4 or 5 people, and they do 15, 20 minutes each. But we did Gilbert for an hour, and it was breathtaking. We did a whole bunch of them, and it turned out to be really, really great because he was not feeling very good, so he wasn't able to go on the road and do a lot of dates. So he was doing this from his living room. And we totally planned to do as many as he wanted to do. And we planned on, because Dara actually said to me, she said, I can't get Gilbert to sit down and write new material. He just keeps coasting. For the last few years of life, it lost a little bit of this energy, this brilliant Gilbert energy. But when he did Set List, he came alive and he loved it. So we were even talking about, that, when he goes on the road and goes back to places he's been in the past year, it's all new material. It's all made up on the spot. So he could do them a million times, he could do a week of shows in the same venue that would be completely different every night, So we were planning on going out and doing all that together. And sadly, he gave up.
I think I just want to say that he's like a multi-dimensional creature. I mean, obviously you guys I'm just on the outside, but as a fan, he seemed like he would have done well doing what he does at any point in human history. Like in the 1920s, he would have been like with the movies with Humphrey Bogart. He was a Humphrey Bogart kind of guy.
There's a whole bunch of comics that are lost to history right now. From like the 40s and 50s, who if they showed up on the scene right now, they would be like the most avant-garde comedians, getting like the most incredible attention for being completely unique and original. I mean, people like Brother Theodore or Professor Irwin Corey. Nobody knows who they are. But in the 40s, they were doing this stuff that was so avant-garde and brilliant. And so maybe Gilbert would have been the same. But Gilbert was, and this is one of the things that I love about Gilbert is that he was, and this is why Dara was so important in his life. When Dara, when he and Dara got together and they got married, Dara got him. Like she got how special he was. She got how he needed to be taken care of. She got how, how joyful he could be. I mean, can you imagine a better father for a kid than Gilbert Gottfried?
Oh my God, that's like,
so he was phenomenal with kids. In fact, at one point I said to him, Gilbert, how are your kids doing? He's like, oh, they're doing good. Yeah. I said, are they funny? He goes, to be honest, I prefer their earlier work. But so basically, Dara had 3 kids, Gilbert and their 2 kids, But this is the thing about him is that as aggressive as his comedy was, as, loud and annoying as he was on stage, as biting as his material was, as refusal to say that there are any lines that he wouldn't cross, as aggressive as all that is, he was like a man child, man. He was like this weird, innocent naif in the world, He was such an interesting contrast. But I love Gilbert. I loved him. That was a heartbreaker.
Yeah. Who okay, and we got 7 minutes before we have to do that thing again. Could I get you back for one more time? If we I know you
yeah.
I don't want to how much time you got? Okay, it's because I got 7 minutes before I have to redo the thing that we just did before. It will put a bumper in there, but like so if we get cut off, I'll reinvite you. But who are some of the comedians that are you excited about? You're excited about today? Like, I mean, I've been watching a lot of different podcasts and people that I love. I was gonna see if you've been. I mean, you just did your. We want to get to the green room that you're doing now, or if you're gonna.
Oh, in my backyard.
In the light, but you. Yes, I was there for that. I think I got muted because I yelled too loud. But
Oh, you were there on the Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well you got to come to the live show, man.
Well, when I'm in LA, I'm in Oregon right now, sweating my balls off, man. It's fucking 100 degrees here.
Oh, I didn't realize. Yeah. It was fun, right?
I loved it. I loved it. Had the green room vibe, but in now, and it's all these working parts that are technically. It's all like I went to I saw Mo Mandel at he's a buddy of a friend of mine. I guess we're friends now, but I did an outside show similar to this at the beginning of COVID when that was the Zoom show was the thing. But it's like we're gonna have to wrap. It'll be interesting to see how this gets connected and grows in a way because it's like this is the first Tom Green's Webovision. This is the first you were there at the inception too. Like Overton was doing a podcast after and you had the green room, which is basically a podcast, but live, but in a way.
My producing partner, Barbara Roman, and I were just talking about how, we miss a certain vibe, and so we're like, what can we do that's just fun? That's not about commerce, that's just fun. So we started doing these live green rooms in my backyard, which again, all just personal invites, and it was such a great experience. And the comics had a great experience hanging out with all these people because they were all smart, people that know comedy and, or artists or, things like that. And they just had the greatest times. This is really nice that, this is happening and, this is not about selling tickets or advertising or any of that sort of shit. And then Ben Glebe, who was also on that first one that we did, Ben Glebe and a guy named Steve Hofstetter started Nowhere Comedy during the pandemic. And, there were a bunch of Zoom shows that popped up and everything, but they really turned it into something really special. And they did it. He's got a whole studio in his house now, and he's got gear that just blows my mind, what he can do with it. And so he said, well, let's try and do this, give this opportunity for people around the world to come to your backyard, let's do that. And he was projecting, on our sidewalk, on my fence, my back fence. He was projecting all the people who were on the Zoom thing. We incorporated them, and it really felt like they were in the room,
Did it?
And,
I was going to ask you about that. How did that feel to see a wall of faces? But could you hear it? Was because I feel like I didn't want to laugh too loud because I didn't know the EQ system. I was kind of trying, and we were turned down to a certain level. That
Well, and, the first time we did was a little bit more complicated than we expected it to be. But the next time we do it, all that stuff will be ironed out. But we could hear you. We had conversations with some people over the Zoom, during the show. Mm-hmm. Ben Glebe was doing crowd work with the crowd on Zoom. Could see him, so that was kind of fun. But this Nowhere Comedy is really wonderful, and of course, it's not as popular as it was during pandemic because people rather go live, whatever. But he was like, listen, I think this is a really good thing. We should do it. So he's been amazing. He really took it to another level. And it was great. Everybody that was on it, their comments were just like, this is so cool.
Because killer sets. Everyone had great sets. They're fucking funny. Great.
Yeah, and that was different from the green room show I did at Showtime, was because I wanted to introduce a lot of comedians. Because you asked me about who are some of the comedians that people don't know yet, whatever. And I wanted to introduce a lot of those people, and I wanted to mix them with people that are solid pros, and just give this sort of um, variety of kinds of comedy that you can see right now. And so many of the people on the few that we've done already, just like nobody had ever heard of them. And it was almost like they were like, if you say this person is good, I want to see this. And it turned out to be a great experience for everybody. So we're going to do them again. Follow at Green Room with PP on Twitter. There will be announcements there. Or you can just go to Nowhere Comedy. You can also follow at Nowhere Comedy because they do a bunch of stuff. Ben Glebe has a bunch of shows on there that are really great. He's doing a late night talk show. It's great. So because we're just sort of doing them on kind of an unpredictable schedule right now. Although I talked to Kamau Bell, he wants to come and do one, and Drew Carey wants to come and do one, and a bunch of people. But so on one of them, I had a couple of comedians that I just absolutely love that most people here hadn't heard of. One, which some people had heard of, was Guy Branum, who is just fantastic. I'm a big fan of Guy Branum's. If anybody in your audience has never heard of him,
Guy Branum's?
Guy Branum, Branum. He's had some, he's had some TV. I mean, he's definitely, he's a player in show business. I mean, he's not like just some guy starting out, but not enough people know him because he's brilliant. And then I had this kid on. I went to see a show. We do this with Jake Kroger from the Comedy Bureau, and Jake Kroger, he knows what Barbara and I like. He knows the kind of comedy that we like, and he's turned on by the fact that we like that kind of comedy. And he knows everybody. He knows open micers in the Los Angeles area.
We're gonna cut. We're gonna be right back. I've got to invite you. I hate doing this.
All right, go.
잘 보이죠?
So another person that we had on was a young guy that I saw that I was telling you about. Jake Kroger has introduced me to a lot of people that just hadn't come across my radar. And I fell in love with this one kid. His or her name, I'm not sure, is Max Beasley. And first of all, he's a great joke writer. Mm-hmm. Brilliant stuff. And he also happens to be in the early stages of transitioning. And like he talks about it, but unlike most people who are doing that kind of thing, it's not like a confessional thing. Like he's written great jokes, so he's really interesting. He's very, very, very funny. She, I don't know how he's identifying now because he's going through it and figuring it out himself too. Max Beasley.
Was he at your show or she? Max?
He was on. We didn't do over Zoom. That was one that we did before Ben Glebe set us up to do the Nowhere comedy shows.
So when you began doing the Green Room, the Aristocrats, which I saw in the movie theater. I saw the Aristocrats in the movie theater twice.
Wow.
Showed it to my family on video cassette, rented it, showed it to my mom because I thought it was the fucking funniest thing in the world, right? And, she got to about where Lisa Lampanelli section.
Oh, that's pretty far. That's pretty far for a lot of people. There used to be a website.
She walked out of the room after that. She's like, "What are you doing?"
There used to be a website. I don't know if it still exists, and I don't know what the name of it was, but there used to be a website that was all these stories about how Aristocrats was a deal maker or a deal breaker in relationships. So all these people are like, she didn't make it past this, and so that broke up, and other people are like, when she laughed at Sarah Silverman, I knew she was the one for me. It was hilarious. A really funny website. I don't know if it's still on.
Maybe make some reactionary videos with people watching that for the first time.
See, if we didn't release the movie in 2005, that might have been a thing.
You can still do that. People love it. There's YouTubers.
Well, the movie was stuck in legal limbo for a long time. After it was released, a few years after it was released, the distributor Think Film was on the verge of bankruptcy. And so they sold to a gentleman whose name escapes me at the moment, but he was somebody who tended to cannibalize things. Like he would buy up a lot of distressed distribution companies or production companies, make all kinds of money as he destroyed them. He's actually he's actually in prison right now for a whole other situation that has nothing to do with the Think Film situation. He's just a bad guy. But anyway, so at one point, there was a court got involved, and as part of a settlement, the court ordered a forced auction of assets. And one of those assets is a library of rights to about 450 movies, like a bunch of Oscar-winning documentaries, you know, offbeat things like John Cameron Mitchell's Short Bus, which is, you know, brilliant, bold piece of filmmaking.
I never saw it. I heard about it. I know about it, but I haven't seen it.
I mean, there were literally like maybe 6 to 10 Oscar-winning docs in that, you know, thing, and The Aristocrats was one of that lot. So we were like, well, how do we, you know, extract The Aristocrats out of this so that we can do something with it, you know, to give it to a different distributor or whatever. But then somebody else ended up getting an injunction against the forced auction. And so that put all of those titles into a legal limbo. And by the way, there's a handful of movies by Laura Poitras, you know, who's a great documentarian and of note. And I ran into her somewhere, and I said, listen, I'm stuck in that Think Film, you know, black hole too. And I said, because I figured, you know, like, I saw her receive an award that was given to her by Frank Kennedy and Kathleen Marshall. I mean, she knows people in the business, you know? And I figured, boy, and she's a very well-known filmmaker and documentarian, tremendously well-respected, and does phenomenal work, by the way. Most of it is very politically, like she did, you know, Snowden and all of that stuff, among other things. So I figured, well, if anybody knows how to get out of this abyss, she would. She knows everybody. She's had a million movies. You know, she must know the business inside and out, as opposed to, you know, me and Penn. We were just like, you know, okay, you make a movie. And I spoke to her about it, and she was like, I'm as screwed as you are. You know, she's like, we're just stuck. There's nothing we can do. And that went on for a long, long time until eventually one of this guy who's in prison's former partners somehow struck a deal. It's so labyrinthine, I can't even explain it, but he ended up controlling some of the assets, and Shout Factory had approached me about, you know, getting the rights, and I told them the whole situation. So they just kind of kept it on their radar, and as soon as they had an opportunity to get it, they bought the rights from Think Film. But they haven't really done much with it. I mean, they just basically, you know, they put it on a couple of platforms, and they're selling, you know, you can download it through them and a couple other things. They haven't really done
time capsule, though. It's a time capsule, like the Green Room. What you've created, and I'm sure you realize this, but you're creating an archive of these brilliant voices and minds, and that are like once in a lifetime sort of situations.
Yeah, somebody said to me that the, you know, like the Green Room episode with Ray Romano, Mark Maron, Judd Apatow, Gary Shandling, and Bo Burnham. You know what happened between that gang? There, that said, like that's like a major moment in comedy history, because you see all of these cats who are already tremendously successful discovering Bo Burnham for the first. Nobody knew who he was, you know. And
the piano player guy.
Yeah, Bo Burnham. Yeah, who's he just won an Emmy for?
He's huge right now. He blew. Yeah, he blew up.
Yeah, and you know, nobody had ever heard of him. I introduced him to a whole, you know, new audience, because he had a following on YouTube. He was doing you know, stuff out of his bedroom when he was 15, you know. And so you know, somebody said that episode alone is like, wow, you know, like Gary Shandling's reaction to this new talent that he had never seen before is just so beautiful, you know, and so interesting to watch. So yeah, I guess that happens, but that's what I'm trying to do with when I do the Green Rooms at home, is just have these people that nobody really knows with people that, you know, I mean, on one of the shows, it was like, you know, along with those people, it was like Kira Sultanovich, who's a solid pro, and she's, you know, a monster act, you know, and a lot of people knew her. She had been on the Tonight Show tons. She did some recurring stuff on there, and it's really great. I love mixing old and young comics and comics from overseas and American comics. I love that, because people really get to see, and I get to experience, you know, this thing that's like, You know, it's like musicians. You could be some 90-year-old jazz cat who meets this 20-year-old, you know, guitarist who's just a prodigy and is amazing. And, you know, they connect. All the other things that fall away, all the differences between them fall away because they get it. They get the art, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that. And I love doing that and making that possible.
Yeah, you're a bridge for that's you're the bridge between communities discovering each other. Like when Shandling was I can see that. I remember that look that Shandling was giving him, that they started kind of, okay, kid, okay, you know, I don't know the right verbiage, but you can see he is keying into, oh, this is a kid that doesn't know anything yet, but you know, there was a little bit of that repertoire. But yeah, I think I've seen all of your green rooms like multiple times just because they're fucking awesome.
Yeah, and that's another thing, you know, all these corporations that end up getting involved in shit, everything gets fucked up. You know, the Aristocrats was, you know, it's virtually, you know, been put to sleep. The book I did, Saturday East, is, you know, which is, you know, when it came out, it was a hardback book, and the price point was $30 because there's beautiful photography in there, which is just expensive to do. Dan Dion's portraiture is just gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was released at a $30 price point. And we knew that, you know, we weren't going to make any money off of that. We weren't going to sell tons of books off of that. But that was the first run. And we figured, well, you know, eventually we'll do an oversized paperback, and that'll be like $14.95. And then people will really get, you know, to appreciate it. But then the publisher, which was, I think, Random House, just like, well, you know, we didn't sell enough copies, so we're not doing that. Like, and, you know, so we couldn't reissue that, you know. And then with Green Room, it's like, you know, it should be sold to platforms all over the place. I mean, you should be able to get it on any platform at this point, you know.
Absolutely.
But Showtime, it's CBS that has the distribution rights, and the only place it's legally available is on Amazon Prime. And it's still on Showtime On Demand. You know, every once in a while, it's like it'll be on Showtime Demand for 6 months, and it'll be off for 6 months, and it'll be on for 3 months and off for 6 months. And, you know, it's like one of those. But so we're seeing nothing from that. And it's not getting the exposure it could have. But having said that, it was at the time Showtime's most illegally downloaded series.
Yeah.
And they were, when we were still on the air for 2 seasons, they were on top of getting stuff taken off of YouTube and, you know, sending people to the right places and stuff. But as soon as we were canceled, they just stopped minding the store. So it's for free everywhere. And
yeah, you can find it on YouTube, right? YouTube has,
it's people have uploaded it everywhere. It's all over YouTube.
Yeah. Now they win.
Because nobody's minding the store. You know?
Okay.
And that's okay because, you know, it got more views from being illegally uploaded on YouTube than Showtime could ever possibly, you know, have garnered. Yeah. So more people have discovered it, and the fan base has grown like crazy for it. But, you know, they're not doing the show anymore. So we just started doing it in our backyard, and we'll see. Just, you know, people enjoy it, great, you know. So follow on Twitter, follow @Green Room with PP, and you'll see announcements there for when we're doing the next one. Like I said, it's pretty flexible right now, and I'm doing it based on people's avails and stuff.
Yeah, well, that's also gives you the freedom to have a show like that, because you're not, okay, like Gene Wilder said, I like the show, but I don't like the business.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, that's like been my Achilles heel, even writing the script with fucking Steve, and having all these 3 different filmmakers make different versions or steal jokes out of it for 3 different movies for Return to Sender, the midget movie or the small people, because I just remember a quote from that. But it's crazy how there are some people that have the means to do things. And do you believe in that collective conscious idea? Like a conscious idea is out there for everybody and everybody hears it, but some people can pull from it and actually make it into a reality, you know, financially capable of doing that, like bring something from a beginning, middle, and end into a presented thing that makes other things happen from that.
Yeah, it's the classic conundrum about show business, you know.
But still, yeah, it's not gonna, I mean, if I made movies when I was 13 and 12 years old, I can certainly still keep on making them at 53. So it's not gonna, I think the idea of of celebrity or fame, all these different. I don't know why you'd want to be either one of those, but or just to get something done that you feel that you have to do, like as a creative, to do these projects and to get them done, even as frustrating as that might have been with your projects, not seeing some of them getting walled around, but it came through. And the material, the proof is the pudding. The shit still exists, and it looks great as the day you shot it. And so how does it go from here? Because you've been around doing this for a while. Do you? And I know you don't probably talk about making future predictions, but and I'm going to throw out a word that I just learned yesterday is there's something that's almost like that's happening, right? Whereas parasocial. You know that parasocial is where people are becoming friends with the people that they're watching, but they think they are communicating directly to them. Example, newscasters were the first ones to do it. And I'm only glubbing off of a podcast I was watching yesterday to get this information, but it resonates. It's like now material. It's like people are having relationships with people that they know them.
They've never actually met.
Actually didn't. And I actually was thinking about that because I've been on like Kyle Dunningham's show. If you gotta, have you been watching this guy Kyle's show, Kyle Dunningham?
No.
Dunningham? Okay, well I'll send you a link or something. But he's like the king of Instagram. I've been on his show. He's the one that does the face swapping, and he's an amazing impressionist. He's in LA. You guys should meet. But I've been on a show so many times as just a guest, just randomly playing games with them live, and they've been doing this connectivity, which they're integrating what you're doing with the green room live, but they're also doing it. It's nothing like your show, but they're interacting with the people in a real time.
Right.
And so there's there's this thing that's happening that I can't describe, but I wonder if you could describe it or put a lens on like what this looks like in like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Because we're getting so close to the technology. I mean, you're having live shows in your backyard and this connectivity that's happening, it's going somewhere. If it's not going to be Oculus where everyone's in a 3D situation and it's alive, you're at the Comedy Store and you're actually wearing a helmet and you're in their underwear smoking weed.
I have no idea, but I can tell you this. Before we can determine what that's going to be like, we have to make sure that we're going to have a fucking society first. All bets are off, man.
Yeah.
America's falling apart. America's like Soviet now. Everything's falling apart. Nothing's working right. Nobody's doing anything right. Everything's fucked up.
Is it that mishmashy? Is that clunky? Is it all just falling apart before our eyes, or this is just
all falling apart? And it's crazy. I have no idea. All bets are off. But I could go for a good apocalypse right about now.
Again, another. I guess I haven't seen anything yet.
I feel like I'm very much in the George Carlin school, where he's like, I love individuals, but as a group, humans suck. That's kind of how I feel, and I'm kind of like just watching, going, oh, that's funny. That's funny how that's going down. Oh, that's hilarious that that's going down. If we don't start putting some people in prison pronto, this shit's going to come crashing down. We're going to have a civil war. So let's see how that plays out before we start talking about my future. That's how I feel.
I'm podcasting.
Yeah.
Let's see if we even have a future. Like if we were to sustain ourselves and get into a harmonious thing about all, creatures dancing in the eyes of the Lord, like if our human selves right now would be living like the 3-year-old. I just discovered this a few days ago, but like a 3-year-old right now has a possibility of probably living to be about 150 on the average. Like the people.
Oh my God, how horrible for them.
It's a hellscape. Yeah, it is a cantankerous situation in this situation, but it might be best time ever to be alive at the same time.
Every day is an existential dilemma. I've been working on this movie for a long time right now. It's a documentary about Andy Andrist, who is a brilliant comedian. He was one of the Doug Stanhope's Unbookables. And Andy's brilliant. And I actually directed a special for him that you can get on naturejack.com. Naturejack.com. The special is called Andy Andrus Last Shot. And it's fantastic. He's hilarious. And, you know, it was low budget. We did it at Doug Stanhope's house. You know, it's just a bunch of idiots with cameras. It's not slick, but it kind of services the material, which is really raw and great. So if you're interested in seeing a comedian I love, go check out Andy Andrus. You can buy his special Last Shot at naturejack.com. So I've been working on this documentary about Andy, who, with the help of Doug Stanhope, tracked down and confronted on camera his childhood abuser. And it's hilarious. So that's a tall order. I feel like, you know, it's taking so long because it's a very tough balance, you know, but it's kind of an amazing story. And also, I wasn't involved with it. It's kind of like I'm working with found footage. They just ran cameras through this whole journey. And so I've got that footage. You know, I did a couple of interviews, but that's about it. You know, in fact, the credit I want to put on it is, you know, a film by Paul Provenza, directed by nobody in particular. You know?
The truth. The truth always wins.
I'm working with this, so I'm working with essentially found footage, trying to tell this story, and it's an incredible story. And you know, it's kind of a different paradigm for, you know, every time you see something about this reality, this, you know, child abuse and what have you, which is just horrific. I mean, that's another thing, is working on this for so long. It's like it's taken its toll on me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's heavy.
But you know, every time you see anything about that subject, it's very morose, and you know, it's understandable why. But here's Andy, who's turning it into comedy as he's telling you the truth and the reality of it. And as you go through this experience of him confronting this guy, you know, he's just gets funnier and funnier. And that's something you don't really see very often. So it's a story of how tragedy becomes comedy. It's a story about friendship, because they all rallied around Andy. It's a story about being open and talking about this stuff. Like, you know, almost every scene that Andy's talking about this in, he's on a mic, whether it be a podcast or a stand-up, or, you know, he's on a mic, which is sort of, you know, that's the thing, is that people that have this happen to them, they have such shame, they don't talk about it, and it makes things worse and worse and worse. So he's just putting out this example of just talk about it, you know? So there's a lot going on, and it's all very heartfelt and very compassionate.
When do you think you'll be showing that?
I don't know. I've been working on it.
I won't ask questions like that.
I'm hoping. I've had to do recuts, you know, long involved recuts, but I'm getting close to it. I think it'll be done in the next few months, or at least to a place where, you know, I can see what tweaks to make. But we're getting there. But it's a pretty compelling story, I think.
Yeah, there's so much trauma.
One of those projects that's not really, you know, you're not going to see it at the, you know, Regal Cinemas 15. It's a pretty underground kind of thing. And because there were nobody's really shooting it, it's got this punk vibe. It's just a bunch of idiot cameras, you know. So it's not a slick thing. It's not for, you know, it'll be something that we'll find an audience that, you know, responds to it one way or another. And I think it'll actually help some people. I think it'll drive some people crazy. I think some people will have a really difficult time with it. You know, people get triggered by this stuff, but I think some people will also find it really, you know, liberating. You know, people who suffered this kind of things. Well, you know, your life doesn't have to be miserable because of it. You know, as he talks about how it fucked up his life in ways that he didn't even know.
Yeah.
You know, just so it unfolds with him getting funnier and funnier about it, you know?
I can relate. I've had trauma in my own life, and when I started going down that rabbit hole, I realized that I was talking to my grandmother and her grandmother and her grandmother down. So everyone's been mentally or physically abused, and one way or another, and you didn't realize it was happening until after you had it, and then you took it in live, you know, long time to talk about it aloud, and, you know, and not in shame, but you're a child. You didn't know what was happening, and how that blocks you from how you react to other people and your social circumstances and how you treat and
Well, one of the things that that Andy was dealing with was he realized that he would get really angry with his wife about certain things, and he was like, why is this happening? It was like he describes it as like having a dryer full of sneakers, all the time. This chaos, this thumping going on, just like he could never really free himself from it. And it affected his relationship with his parents. It affected his relationship with his wife, and just he just wanted it all to just shut up. And this was what worked for him, was tracking this guy down. As he says, he's like, I've been dealing with this shit my whole life. You've gone on, had your life, for the last 30, 40 years, whatever. You probably never thought twice about this. Yeah. So I want to put it back to you. Now you have to think about it. It's wild. It's really.
And now that he has done that, and now that he did that, he can. It's actually vocalizing it and putting it out, and it's all on the table. It's very cathartic for the person.
Yeah,
have that be said out loud in a context where everybody, he's not hiding anything. He's not, there's no avoiding it. He's not proud of it.
And here's where it gets really interesting, is because after they have the confrontation, the guy sued them. The guy sued Andy and Doug. And so they had to go to sit with the guy in court again.
What?
Yeah. And as Andy says, is like, if I lose this, it's like getting raped again. It's a wild story. I'm telling you, it's unbelievable, and it's really cool.
And like this story, it happens to a lot of people, though. This is great that you're as an archivist, documentarian, filmmaker, blah blah blah, etc. This is just it's reality, and a lot of people don't have a voice to be heard. And if they realize that other people can say what they need to say out loud, and there's nothing explodes around them, the place isn't falling apart. It's
and what's really wild is that when you do open up about it, you'll find out that 15 other people it happened to who don't talk, or have problem communicating it, or are tormented by it in some way, or they've gotten, they've worked around it somehow, but it's a big deal to them. And so that's a big part of the thing, is talk about it. Because this person that abused him had also tried to abuse his older brother, and it didn't happen. But the older brother never said a word about it. And so Andy went into the circumstances with this guy, having no information that he should know that this guy ain't right. And it was like, they live in the same house.
Yeah, and also the betrayal, though, because he's supposed to protect him, though, too. As a brother, he's supposed to protect him.
A lot of heavy shit. Like I said, weird stuff with his parents, having to figure out how to forgive them, because they were part of how it all came together. Obviously they weren't doing anything actively wrong, but they weren't being very smart, and they weren't being, they didn't bother to fight. It's a long story.
No, I get it. And I think it resonates with people. I think this is, living in the future, whatever, 2022, this is what people need to hear, because it's echoed throughout generations of people have been abused, and it's huge, giant, because people feel so alone, and they're not alone.
Yeah.
And there is power in numbers when it comes to people, realizing,
that's a big theme of the movie, is if a handful of people around Andy had spoken about this stuff, the whole thing would have been avoided, but nobody talked about it. And so that's a big theme of the movie, is just talk about it. And like you said, so many people are affected by it to varying degrees. I mean, some people it's really horrific, horrible, like Barry Crimmins, I mean, this was hard. He was raped as an infant. I mean, his story is just horrific, and other people just have weird, strange things happen that aren't necessarily, as horrific as that, but it fucks with everybody's head, no matter what level of it's at. There's still a fundamental level of, okay, now I'm screwed up. And so, that's what's behind this whole thing.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be called Caught in a Trap. And I'll let you know when it's ready for anybody to see.
Caught in a Trap. That's a Brett's with Friends exclusive. Caught in a Trap, the name of Provenza's new movie flick.
Yeah, see, I'll keep you posted.
Okay, keep me posted because it sounds like it's important work because people like it's just so like it's so layered and it affects everyone's relationships. It's just like I think a lot of that was the older generations though. They're the 50s, 30s, the 20s, the 1850s.
But there's also there's also this weird thing that happens. Like in Andy's case, first of all, he was kind of groomed. Like the guy was kind of like an uncle to him, it was kind of like behaved as if he was a mentor to him, So there's a whole trust thing there. There's a whole, but also, in Andy's case, the guy gave him alcohol when he was like, 12, 13, rented porno movies and they would watch together and all weirdness would come from that and everything. But he planted the seeds with Andy that you can't talk about this because you're going to get in trouble because you've been drinking and you've been watching porn. So you can't talk to your parents about this. So that is another level of how, people get manipulated in this situation to where they can't talk about it. They feel like somehow they're going to get in trouble or that somehow it's their fault. They brought this on themselves.
They asked for it.
All that stuff. And Andy just breaks all of that down and he does comedy about it. So it's a fascinating piece of work. I mean, for me, it's like climbing comedy Mount Everest. Like I remember very early on when I started working on this, I was having a conversation with Michael Moore because we were both at some festival together. And he was a big fan of the Aristocrats and we chatted and I told him about this and he said, if you can pull that off, and there's not a lot of people who can, he goes, but if you can pull that off, you're doing something really, really amazing as a filmmaker. So I'm sort of conscious of like, this is really like climbing comedy Mount Everest. Like if I can just make it to the top of this, I will have accomplished something, regardless of whether people like it or they don't like it,
It'll find it odd.
But that's a thing that, that's where I'm at right now. Since the business is not my friend, since show business is not my friend, I'm just concerned with the work. And I kind of feel like, this is a hell of a creative comedic challenge, regardless of it. That's the thing I learned a long time ago is just to let go of outcome, to just do the stuff that I want to do. And if it's successful, it's successful. If it's not, it's not. But a long time ago, I stopped thinking of my quote unquote career in any sort of linear fashion. And I just started to get this feeling of like, I'm just going to do little projects that are, somehow I feel are some artistic expression, and whatever happens, happens. There's no through line to my career, if show business, if I had gotten more traction on some of these TV shows I've been on or some of these things I've been working on, whatever, I had gotten more traction on them and they put me to a place where I wasn't starting from square one at every project I wanted to do, then things might be different, but this is the reality. And so that's where I landed, was just make it, just do it for you and then see what happens. Let go of that outcome. It's a very Zen thing.
It does get when you realize, I don't know, when you like, it's just like when I was a child, I made movies, I drew and I painted, and I've been doing that the whole time. And I've had my successes and my failures, but I've always kept on creating throughout the way. Sure, I was resentful and jaded when I had ideas taken and actually, used on a few, and it was actually is a funny that it's been used, that I just happened to be in the around that circuit that it was used 3 different movies based on my one script, but it's just that means to get things done, but I'm still going to do it. Hopefully able to make it someday the way I want to make it. But there's also a cartoon version of that, maybe. That's, you
paint a painting, and theoretically, in the abstract, that painting could end up at MoMA and could be one of the most important paintings ever, or it could end up sitting on the floor in your studio facing the wall and nobody ever sees it until you're dead. Doesn't matter. You still got to paint that painting.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's still going to exist, but it's like, why do you do it? Do you do it because you want to be famous? Do you do it? What's the real thing you're talking about? Sometimes when I'm talking to actors or people, they're like, well, what's making you happy? Because the happy is in the doing. The doing of it. The doing of it is the happy. That's why you do it. You don't do it
Right.
Somebody saying later, "Oh, okay, that was great. Don't you feel like buy you a beer?" Sure, that's fun, but you're still, I don't know. There's fame and media and the way things are getting distributed. I mean, I see a lot of really great, really great things coming out just because everyone's concentrated. You've been kind of honing in on this, and I've been sort of doing my, Steve's got his book. Julie's working on her stuff. Everyone's doing their thing.
I'm sure this is true for you, but I know there's work and there are artists who are absolutely phenomenal, and nobody's ever heard of them. Nobody's ever seen this work. People know there's way more of that than everything you know of. So that's just a fact of life. And also, the other thing is, there's just so much stuff. There's just so much stuff. Like, can we just get a moratorium? Like, no stuff for like a year, 2 years, no stuff.
There's no stuff.
Other stuff. There's too much fucking stuff. And so, I had to let go of caring about whether or not anybody sees my stuff. There's so much fucking stuff. and what's the point of it, So, it's just weird.
It's just funny because sometimes when you because we got about 5 minutes left here before we take off, or any glasses. The stuff you make and the things you do, and it's your life, and so that's what we're talking about here. And hello, in the last 5 minutes, do you want to talk about anything in particular that we haven't talked about, or you've never talked about on a podcast at all? Is there any? Do you want to wrap it up? Do you want to? I think there's 1,000 more questions I could ask you, but
like to say, follow on Twitter at Green Room with PP, so you can see when we're doing another backyard green room show, which also incorporates stand-up, and you'll see some people you never heard of who are terrific. It's very well curated. As I was talking about Jay Kroger from the Comedy Bureau, he's a sort of a spiritual guide through all of this. He's like, this is a person I think you want to know that you may have never heard of, and I'm like, oh man, I want this person, I want to show people this person I just, that Jake just turned us on to, So follow at Green with PP. Just keep an eye out for when we announce these nowhere comedy shows. And no matter where you are in the world, you can get a ticket. I think it was $10 or something like that to be part of it. And check out Andy Andrist's special. Now, Andy it's very dark, but it's also quite brilliant. Andy is a very interesting cat, and he doesn't talk about his abuse in this. He talks about a lot of other stuff. He has a piece about school shootings that is like, how can that be funny? Well, he does it. He did it. It's funny, and he makes a point. He's funny, and he makes a point about corporations controlling the world. He's funny and makes a point about taking care of our environment, but it's like dark as shit. But he's also right. He's just fantastic. Check out Last Shot, Andy Andrist's Last Shot. You can get it at naturejack.com. And if there are any Stanhope fans out there and you haven't seen it yet, you'll definitely love it, because he's one of Stanhope's favorite comedians. And you can definitely see why they love each other as much as they do, because they both have that unbelievable way of just cutting through the bullshit and being vicious and fucking hilarious and honest and real. So check that out. And at Green Room with PP on Twitter.
Yeah, it's okay. Final thoughts. I want to end it with, we got 3 minutes, so I want to use up every fucking second of it. Mel Brooks, quick thoughts. Thoughts of Mel Brooks?
One of the greatest ever. One of the greatest ever. One of the greatest ever. I was playing a character based on him in a Neil Simon play on Broadway, and I ended up getting fired. But Neil Simon wrote it, and he would come up to me and he'd say, "I swear to God, it feels like you're channeling Mel. It's weird." Even though the character wasn't Mel Brooks, it was based on him, right? So as I was working on the play, I was like, boy, as an actor doing research, I should meet Mel Brooks. So I called his office, and his assistant goes, "Hold on." And 2 minutes later, Mel gets on the phone. "Hello, who is this?" I said, "My name is Paul Provenza." He goes, "Paul Provenza, how do I know that name? I've heard that name. How do I know that name?" I said, "Well, you might have read that, I was cast in Neil Simon's new play about the Sid Caesar writer room called Laughter on the 23rd Floor." And he goes, "I heard about that. It's about the writing room, right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a big part in this, right?" And I said, "Well, yes, you're one of the characters that, the character's based on." And he goes, "I heard they made me like a hypochondriac in this thing, like I'm always sick or something." I said, "Well, one running gag, but no, it's much more elaborate than that. He's, I have to call Neil Simon. I don't know why he would. I need to have a conversation about this. And he goes on for 5 minutes about this thing. Blah, 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 blah. And he goes, anyway, what can I do for you? And I said, well, I was wondering if maybe I can take you to lunch and I can hear some stories. He goes, I would love to, but I'm not really feeling that well. To this day, I don't know if he was joking or not.
I met him really briefly at the film at the Fly premiere in San Jose, California, with David Cronenberg.
Wow.
I met David Cronenberg, and he's got him to sign my ticket. And he said, I got Mel Brooks's ticket. They felt, his seating chart. He left it on the ground, and I picked it up, and I had David Cronenberg sign it. And I said, I love your work. He goes, he signed it from one scanner to another, David Cronenberg.
Nice.
And
nice. Did your head explode?
My head exploded. Did explode. Okay, I got 1 minute left, and then I met Mel Brooks.
Oh, I do want to say this. If you have serious, go and check out Obsessive Comedy Disorder. I worked on those with Dan Pasternak, and some of them are real documentary style, audio documentary style stuff, and brilliant. And Dan Pasternak is a Rain Man of comedy himself. He knows everything. And we're also doing a podcast together for Comedy Dynamics. And the episodes of that include us talking to John Cleese, us talking to the new Bugs Bunny, with a 40-year-old interview that Dan did with Mel Blanc when he was a little kid. And we spent a day with Shecky Green, who is almost 97 years old. And it turns out he is the history of Las Vegas. And our time with him was unbelievable. I know people think Shecky Green, but they kind of said Shecky Green was a pioneer, and he's still sharp as a tack, and he's 97. We did an episode with
Friends with friends, friends with friends. Friends with friends, friends with friends.
4, their most accomplished album. I think their undisputed masterpiece is Hip to Be Square. Hey, Paul!